Hello, I'm Mark Fishman. I'm the CEO of Building Brilliant Futures, and we work with inner city kids. We take them from the courts to the classroom. And fortunately for us, we're able to, for the sixth year, be able to have this end of the year roundtable with some of the leaders of USA Volleyball. The first thing I'm going to do is ask everyone to give a quick description of themselves, what they've done, who they are, just so everybody knows. And with that, let me lead that off with John Speraw, please.
I'm John Speraw. I'm the CEO of USA Volleyball, former men's coach for Team USA for 12 years and UCLA for the last 12 years, and transitioned into this new role just about a year ago.
And Eric?
Eric Sullivan. I'm the current women's USA national team, indoor national team coach. Came from the college space. I was coaching in college for the last 20 years. And I'm also currently head coaching League One Austin in the professional side.
And you also went to 2 Olympics as a libero, didn't you?
Correct. I was the first libero. I played in 2 Olympics in 2000 and 2004.
Phil?
My name is Phil Dahlhauser, a 4-time Olympian, gold medalist. I just finished my 23rd season on the beach as a professional.
Todd?
Hi, my name is Todd Rogers. I'm the current head coach for the beach volleyball team at Cal Poly University and have been so for the last 10 years. I played for 20 years after that in 2 Olympics and happened to win a gold medal with Phil in 2008 Beijing.
Taiba?
Hi, Taiba Hanif Park, 3-time Olympian, 2-time silver medalist, currently assisting Eric and the women's national team indoor, and also assisting him at the Love Pro Austin side. Played in the college space, been in the college space, but enjoying the pro life.
And Karch?
Hi, my name is Karch Kiraly, and played volleyball for a long time indoors and beach, a few Olympics, and then made the transition to coaching on the women's side for about 16 years, and then just a year ago became head coach of the USA men's national team.
So with that, we have a wonderful group of accomplished athletes and coaches, a bunch of intellectually curious coaches. This is a great opportunity for us to talk about where USA Volleyball is, where it's going. And with that, I think we made a huge change in the spirit and vibe of USA Volleyball last year. John, would you give us a quick update of last year and where we're going towards LA 2028?
Sure. It's been a great year for me personally. It's been an amazing transition. I've learned a lot. As I assess the USA Volleyball enterprise, I think about it in 4 different buckets. The first one's performance. We're here to win medals, and I think we're really on track to do that in LA. I'm feeling really good about the summer. Our women's sitting team won the World Cup just last month. And the men's sitting team has improved dramatically. So I just feel really good about where the sitting program is. They're returning 3-time gold medalists. So we're in a good place in the sitting side. On the beach, our women are doing great. Just won the silver medal at the World Championships, but TKN has had a great summer. But really, it's just notable how much talent we've developed on the women's beach side and how many teams are capable of competing at the highest levels internationally and the potential we have for success in LA. On the men's side, we're going to need to get a little bit better, and we're having conversations about how we support the men in different ways and think creatively about how to get to the medal stand. But I think we can do it. I think we have some athletes that can do it. We just need to support them in the right way, and I think we're going to move forward with that. And then on the indoor side, Karch and Eric can certainly elaborate on their experiences this summer, but we all knew going in it was going to be a youth movement on both sides. And I think for us, it's a huge advantage since we're already qualified for the 28 Olympic Games as the host, for us to have the opportunity to go really, really young, not really worry about our world ranking, and yet we still, I thought, had really successful summers, and most importantly, the opportunity for some really high potential young athletes to get some experience. So I thought that was a great summer. From the pipeline side, I think our NTDP teams have had unprecedented success across the board. So that program is doing a great job of preparing the next generation of athletes. And one of my my little pet projects, it's not really a pet project, is what are we doing at the grassroots level? As you know, Mark and everyone here, I've got 8 and 10-year-old girls at home, and they're starting to play volleyball. And what's interesting is most sports have produced an American or athlete development model, an ADM, and we've never done that for volleyball. And so you have most of the membership of USAV are 13 to 18-year-old girls, but we don't really do a great job of continuing to stay connected to our athletes as they migrate into adulthood, but we don't do anything at the younger ages, which is just fascinating for me to observe as now a parent. And so how are we going to build out the ability for young kids to have great experiences? And we're producing the ADM, and it'll be launched in early 26. So I'm very excited about how we're moving forward on the performance and grassroots side. The second piece is the commercial side. I think coming into this job, knowing that the commercial scope of USA Volleyball was really lacking, how do we improve that? We've made tremendous progress at understanding where we were, what do we need to do to improve that? How do we build partnerships? How do we understand our assets, and how do we work in a sophisticated way with corporate partners? And I think we're in a very, very good position, especially with the backdrop of LA 28, to move the organization forward in 26. I think we've done some tremendous work there. Then there's the foundation side. Foundation has been a complete reset. It's been there for a long time, but it hasn't had the capacity to really make a difference. And already we have. Wade Gerard is our Chief Development Officer and President of the foundation, and he has completely rebuilt that thing in a short period of time and is already making a difference and allocating funding that I think is making an impact in the volleyball community. So really proud of the effort there. And then the final piece I think about is just partnerships. Who are we really partnering with in the volleyball space? We should be. We're the national governing body. We should be working with people, and that's broad-based. It can be corporate partners. It can be other organizations within the space that maybe we haven't even talked to in a long time. It can be with people that are really making a difference, like Starlings and others that are making a difference in the sport. How are we working together? How can we support those efforts? What you're doing, Mark, with Building Brilliant Futures, how you're bringing in these 5th to 8th graders into a Division I program, giving them an experience they've never had before, really the opportunity to inspire young people that haven't had an opportunity to really be involved in volleyball, haven't had that exposure. I think it's really special, and we're proud to be a partner of yours. So this partnership piece, how are we developing relationships in the volleyball landscape, I think is really, really important to us. And I think we've made tremendous strides. So all in all, I think 25 has been a success.
Congratulations on how you're leading the ship. And I know that everybody here believes in you and believes in what you're doing. It's pretty cool. So thanks.
Mark. Thank you.
With that, there becomes a point as an athlete where you're not getting any stronger in the gym. But still, athletes go from being a really good athlete to an elite athlete. You go from being an elite athlete to being able to play on the world tour for a national championship. And then you get this understanding that, hey, I can win this Olympics. I can win the world championships. I can win the NCAAs. I'm here to win. I'm not here to play. What is it that allows you to have that growth mindset? What is it that allowed you to transition as an athlete? So the first time as we had this conversation, I really would like you guys to talk about what changed in you. What did you do differently? How did you put yourself in the position to be a world champion? And then when we're done with that, let's talk about how you do it as a coach. Let's talk about how you inspire. And look, everybody doesn't get to play on the Olympic team. And if you want to win an Olympic medal, you have to have the right players on the team, from the coaching staff to the athletes. But how do you get them to understand and have that vision? And with that, I'd like to start with Todd and Phil. You guys were partners in this. You guys grew into it. I think when you guys started playing together, Phil, I think you had one victory on the AVP. It's a long time ago. So I'd love to hear from you guys if you guys could share that.
Well, I could kind of talk about that one win I had before I started playing with Todd. He talked about how you can only get so fast and so strong, jump so high. At some point, it has to be mental, right? And for whatever reason, I always believed I belonged in the finals. I don't know, even from the first final I was ever in, for whatever, I don't know where that came from. I just had that belief, and I felt very comfortable in the finals. And I think that's something people can learn, right? A belief is just a thought, really, thought over and over and over. And yeah, I don't know how you felt, Todd, in your first finals.
Let's see. My first final, I believe, was actually against Karch. I'm sure Karch remembers that one. I'm guessing as he was coming off a shoulder surgery from, I think it was a 96 the year, if I recall correctly, Karch. And yeah, kind of a funny story. I was playing with Dax Holdren, my first partner on tour in '97, and we made the finals in Hermosa. Karch and AJ had taken the smart route and gone through the winners. We took the dumb route and went through the losers. So we'd played quite a few more games, but Karch really hadn't been hitting yet. He'd kind of been just shooting it around and chopping it around, and it was big court still at that point in time. And so our brilliant strategy in our 22-year-old minds was to serve Karch every single ball because he's not going to hit it all, and we're going to pull and we're just going to scoop him. And Karch did not follow that strategy in any way, shape, or form. He started thumping balls everywhere. Didn't work out. I think he blocked me like 6 times, and it was a good game up to about 3-all, and then we lost 15-4. So my first experience, actually, it was fun.
But you had the best hecklers on the beach.
That's true. Dare Holdren, Dax's cousin, was
fantastic.
I think
my favorite heckler of all time.
He really was. There was times we were laughing too hard on the courts to even, I think, play. He was so good. So, you know what, Phil? I mean, to respond to your, like, you had that belief. I think I had that like internal confidence for myself. I would give my parents credit for that as well. I felt comfortable there, but it was a new experience and something that I didn't win my first final. I had to go through a couple to get to that first one. So it's a different experience, I think, from you. But I agree with you. There's a confidence you have within you that either you've developed through kind of the repetition that you talked about, like talking well to yourself, or maybe from the nurture part of your parents kind of telling you that, hey, you can do this, or the people around you, loved ones, friends, etc. And you build that confidence as a youngster, and you end up finding yourself in that finals, and hopefully, like, you won in the first one. I think I won, I don't know, second, third, fourth one, something like that. But it is for most people, I'd say it's more of unlike you, Phil, I'd say it's more of I get there a couple of times and I learn how to win versus just get there and then you end up winning.
I hear you. But you and Dax won a ton of CBVA tournaments, right? Do you think you kind of like gained that confidence playing on the tour there?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, no, and the CBVA was a very strong tour for a long, long time. I mean, relative to the amateur, certainly the best one. So we did win a bunch of those, and qualified and won some qualifier tour events. So we definitely made that progression upwards until playing in the big leagues against Karch and AJ and everyone else, Whitty and Mike, etc. So yeah, I guess you have a good point there. I had some success at lower levels, which I believe you had as well.
Yeah, Karch, you remember your first final?
I'm not sure I do.
He was 12. He was 12. I can't remember that far back.
I was thinking more about Mark's statement to open up, talk about at some point we stopped getting stronger. We stopped gaining on our, let's say, our power or our jump. I might disagree with him on that. We had a guy who was touching 12 feet in our gym in May, and 2 months later, he's touching 12.5, and he's still going up. So, but what I will agree with him on in terms of trying to make that progression into higher levels, whether it's junior level, high school, college, or beyond, is this idea that, and I I think it's well stated in a book that's now out of print called Mastery by George Leonard. And he talks about most of the time that we are operating in trying to become better at our craft, trying to become higher masters or more elite, is that we operate on this plateau for a very long time. And then we might have a little blip where our skills go up a little. And then we might even drop back down, but the next plateau that we're on is a little higher than the last. And so it's not that learning and improvement is on this clean, pretty, straight, smooth incline. It has a lot of bumps in the road, and it has a lot of plateaus that we have to work through. And that's what probably separates most the people who reach the very top, is to be able to push through those plateaus and understand that learning is still happening during that time, even if it might not be showing in your skills or in your results at that particular moment. I don't know how you feel about that, Ty. How was it for you in college and then beyond, joining the USA team?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad that you brought that up, because I think that was part of an intimate part of my journey, especially in trying to make that 2012 team. Being a two-time Olympian already, I stepped away. I had a family. I had a son that was 2 years old. And so my journey back to making that quad, that team, was very up and down. There were times where I felt like I plateaued. There were some times I was still kind of in this growth process. And man, this is the best I've been blocking in my entire career. But it was very emotional. It was very unsteady. But at the times where I didn't feel like I had my physical strength working for me, again, being able to identify that this is still a learning path, and there are times that I'm going to get worse before I get better. And again, if I'm comfortable, I'm not growing. And so learning to live in that area of uncomfortable, but also recognizing two different things. First being, if I cannot be at my physical best, how can I still add value to the team? And how can I slow the game down, again, from college to pro, the pro to the national team, Olympic team, all of that? The pace of the game continues to get faster. So how do you slow it down? And when I'm not at my physical best, I've got to read more into the context cues. So what is the play telling me? What is the setter position? What is their hands doing? What is an attacker? What are their tendencies? What are their comfort shots? What do they do when they're under pressure? So learning the game and learning the tendencies and patterns and context cues and becoming really good at that, so that I can feel like I'm still operating at a fast pace, but the game is happening slower. And the second part of that is, I'm fortunate enough to play a team sport. So even when I'm not my physical best, how can I add value in being a good team member, a leader? And, I have no idea why essentially I was picked in 2012. Karch could probably speak to that, but my understanding of what I feel is that I did get to a point where I was excelling in my physical abilities. I was a great volleyball player. I was adding value to the team, but I was also a really good leader. And so again, when the physical attributes aren't there, how can I be a leader on the court? How can I guide and be a mentor to those around me and still make this team successful?
Eric, when you were playing, so UCLA, you guys had some great teams, and then you go to two Olympic teams. How did you make that transition? How did you incorporate from those really good, excellent UCLA teams? And that was a period of time where the USA team was obviously really good, but they weren't at that elite level.
Yeah, I feel like throughout my whole career, I was fortunate to be on some really good teams when I was a junior. I think Todd kind of referenced it, of having success at lower levels and then making that jump and living in that uncomfortability that both Karch and Ty were talking about at that next level, and understanding, there's definitely periods of time in there where you're kind of wallowing in it. Then there's some self-doubt. I mean, I think all athletes go through that of, man, can I play at this next level? And just grinding through it. For me, there was a huge part of just being present and enjoying that path, as much as it may have sucked not feeling like I belonged at times. But man, I just enjoyed being in the gym and competing. And for me, I think there was so much value in that of, I don't know, like I said, there were certainly times where I didn't know or think or feel that I could do it, but just showing up the next day and being like, man, I'm gonna run through the wall to see if I can make it happen. And, Karch talked about those plateaus. We talk all the time about growth not being linear, of just understanding that grind, eventually you get off that plateau and you find that next level, and then you build a little confidence there. And that confidence goes a long way into kind of getting you to that next level.
Karch, I'm going to use that as a transition, which is coming out of UCLA, obviously going to the national team, winning 2 gold medals. That was a transition. And you went from that first Olympics where you played an amazing role and were incredibly productive, to the second Olympics where you were the leader on that court and you were leader of that team. And then there's this other period where you dominated on the beach, but then you blow out your shoulder. And you and I had a conversation once about the rehab and how long it took. And there was about a year where you're swinging at balls and you weren't sure where they were going and you weren't having the same success. And you thought about quitting at some point, but you stayed with it. Can you share some of that story about about those transition points, and especially about on the beach when you thought about quitting but you didn't, and when you didn't, you ended up obviously winning a gold medal? I just think it's an incredible story of grit.
Well, I think Ty talked about it. It's really important to understand that we're often not going to be at our physical best, especially the level of volleyball player that we work with. The women's national team, the men's national team, they basically have 2 seasons every year, a professional season, a national team season. It is gnarly. The amount of volleyball that people play is, I don't know anybody who thinks it's the right amount. Most people think it's too much. They don't get enough of a break. So nobody is feeling amazing. And on any given day, as you touched on, Sully, maybe this part of your game's not working. Maybe that part of your game's not working. So finding ways to, I think the great ones just figure out ways to be problem solvers and to adapt and adjust and compensate. Some of us, John, I know you worked with him too, Ken Revisa, and love Ravi. I think of him often. How you doing, John? Like he just was so great. And, but he was a very much a realist in his mental skills coaching, mental performance coaching. And we're not aiming for rainbows and unicorns and things like that. We understand that it's just, it's rarely going to be perfect. We're rarely going to be feeling perfect. We're rarely going to have all the things that we want working for us to be clicking all at the same time. So it's imperfect. How do we embrace that imperfect and actually relish in it, and knowing that if we do relish in it, we can make it a competitive advantage because the other team across the net is also probably not feeling amazing. But if they're wallowing in they're not feeling amazing, and we're like, yeah, bring it on anyway. We don't feel amazing. So what? Then we can turn that into a competitive advantage. And so when I was coming back from shoulder surgery, that was a big challenge. I had to learn I had a different architecture. I would take a swing, the ball wouldn't go where I wanted it to, and eventually just thought, all right, well, that's probably never going to be like that anymore. Play out the season, took a little pressure off myself, and then eventually figured things out. So I don't know, how was that for you, playing and coaching, John?
Gosh, I have so many thoughts as this is analogous to coach, because everyone's been talking about their playing days. How is this analogous to coaching? And then how is it analogous to my current role? It's just, I actually just grabbed a pen, Mark. You'd be proud. I literally was going to start taking some notes. In terms of how I got to the point where I felt like getting back to your original question, Mark, and Karch, I'll get back to yours, but when did I feel like I belonged? It was kind of progressive. Like when I first started coaching, I wasn't thinking about coaching the Olympic team. I was just thinking about how I was going to get better on that particular day. And that led to some opportunities. And then I took advantage of those opportunities. And then I was starting to coach international and then taking advantage of those opportunities and building relationships. Like if you think about how we've all also had opportunities that very relationship based. Hugh and I were coaches on the youth national team back in like 98, and we were Lake Placid coaching a young team. That's how I got to know Hugh. And so when he got the national team job, he asked me if I could be his assistant. Like there was some relationships there that opened up the doors to give me some opportunities that then gave me the confidence to say, oh, yeah, I can do this, right? Because it's the confidence Phil had as he walked out on the court and he goes, I belong here. Like I think confidence is so much about what you're telling yourself and what is that inner dialogue. And Phil walks out there and goes, yeah, this is for me. I got this. And I think for me, I didn't have to say that early enough in the coaching world. But and then the other thought I had, Karch, when you were talking about Ravizza, the thing I always take away from my experiences with him is he always said that the most elite athletes that are the most mentally focused, they've learned how to meditate years ago, they're in the zone 20% of the time, maybe at the highest level. So how are you going to win the other 80% of the time? And how do you figure out how to be good when it's not perfect? And I think to me, I've just always resonated with that. And then, Mark, I got one final thought as I've been trying to draw this analogy to these processes that we've all gone through as athletes and coaches. I think for me, as I'm thinking about the analogy to where I'm currently at, I think there's a few things. One is you have to make this decision. Like, I think so much of my day is just making decisions. And as athletes, we make this decision. This is what we're going to do. This is what we want to do. And then at some point, we just accept change. Like we understand it's not going to be imperfect. Everybody here has talked about a grind at some point. The other 80% when it wasn't great. The days when you're getting worse and not getting better, like there's just change. And I think all of us on this call have at some point really accepted change. And we talk to our athletes about it. And you have to embrace change and seek it because that's where you're getting better. And you start to learn that mindset.
Eric, so you come out, national team, great Texas teams, part of great program. You earned this opportunity to coach the women. It wasn't given to you. You earned it. How are you going to help those women? How are you going to teach them that growth mindset? What are the keys to help them evolve to that next level?
To me, it's about creating that environment every day that fosters everything that we've been talking about, and being very open with them about what it's going to feel like. I don't think, at least in my career, I had as much open communication about those things. It was kind of like get in the gym and go, and you had to sort through some of that on your own, and that was a little bit on the fight or flight kind of deal of like you either solve some things. I feel like the UCLA men's gym was kind of this gladiator's ring of like, man, you got to get in there and figure it out and grind and fight. And for sure, there were plenty of athletes that were very worthy of some things, but couldn't figure that aspect out. I think it's one of the great things that Al created over his, 5 decades of coaching. And I don't know, Karch and John could both speak to that as well. But I always felt that was maybe the best thing that Al did was you had to show up in that gym every day and prove yourself to get an opportunity there. And he just created a great environment for that. I feel like establishing that environment in your gym every day of we're going to, if we're not failing, if we're not putting you in this place that's uncomfortable, I don't feel like I'm doing my job because that's where the growth is occurring. But also being very open with them of like, you're going to fail here, letting them know and understand that is what's going to go on. That should be expected, and trying to help them get comfortable in that space as quickly as possible. I think most or a lot of athletes come in and they just want it to feel good all the time. They think that's where their confidence comes. And for me, it's being in that struggle, surviving that struggle, and learning over time that you can be successful in that struggle. That, with that comes growth and the ability to make change and to get better.
Now, Taiba, you guys are working together with this women's national team program. You've been a head coach. You are an absolute leader in the gym. So how do you take this message and how do you apply it within the structure?
Like Eric said, addressing failure head on, face on. It's this culture of competitiveness and knowing that we're going to make some mistakes. And it's that growth mindset that we're going to take this four-letter word, this fear, and instead of it being something negative, we're going to turn it into something positive. Failure is something positive, finding answers and learning. And basically what we're going to teach is that fear is a mirror reflecting back on us. It shows you the unfinished parts within yourself, within your game. It shows the gaps in your preparation. And so this fear, this gap in our preparation right now is, hey, you're afraid to go back to the service line and get this ball in under pressure. You're afraid to get served right now under a pressure situation. It is a mirror reflecting back to you. So we're going to put you in that situation and we're going to practice. We're going to practice. It shows you the areas that you continue to need growth in. And so we're not going to stray from it. We're not going to be afraid of it. We're going to see where we're not making strides in our practice and our matches. And we're going to identify those big rocks, those points that we need to spend a little bit more time, the points that we're afraid of, and we're going to address them head on. We're not going to shy away from it. And we're going to have open conversations about it. Again, that culture of inviting failure in. We're going to fail faster time and time again.
What's funny is I remember hearing from Todd stories about when you first started playing with Phil and the conversations you guys had about playing together, about where do you want to be and what do you want to do. And to me, one of my favorite stories, probably not Phil's, was the first track workout. Todd, would you share a little bit about the transition, about, again, getting somebody uncomfortable? Because you led that squad for, there was a period where you were leading the squad, then you guys became partners in the squad. Would you talk about this first year or two as Phil started to really ramp up in the way, the pressure and the conversations you guys had?
Yes, I will. I'm going to actually do a quick segue though, because I want to throw out to Karch, who coached the women, Taiba and Eric, you guys are doing so right now. And this may be a male-female thing, and I think it is a male-female thing. But I'm curious, you talked about obviously the failure, and I completely agree with all of you. You have to, in my opinion, you have to embrace failure and understand that that's where you're going to learn the quickest, and you're going to understand where you need to get better. But you talked a little bit about Eric in the gym and at UCLA and the, I guess, cauldron that you guys were in with each other, just, talking smack, whatever it is. And one of the things that as a coach that I've always been interested in, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on, is how do you create, or how have you all created, particularly on the women's side, the ability to get after one another in the gym. And that can be, going right at each other, calling each other, holding each other accountable to the highest of highest levels. And then when you get off the court, still somehow create that team chemistry, the team bonding. You're still actually a team. And the reason you're getting after each other is to make each other the best you possibly can. But then when you step off the court, you're still sisters in arms, so to speak. And I know guys don't really have this, for the most part, too much of a trouble. It's very simple to yell and scream at each other and then walk off, go have a beer and just laugh at each other. And you were not a very nice person. I would say a different word, but in case it's heard by youngsters, I won't. But on the female side, this is an area that I'm constantly, not so much struggling, but trying to learn about. And I'd love to hear the three of you's thoughts after coaching women for many years at multiple different levels. Any one of you want to take it, jump on it.
Karch, you got the solution for that? No, look, Todd.
There is no solution.
Volunteering me, I was about to volunteer Ty.
Look,
I
we
don't.
were telling our kids, yeah, they were telling our locker room the other day. One of the things is, as women, we're going to get emotional. We just are, and I can identify it, but we don't deal with conflict the same way as men. You guys can punch it out on the court and go have a beer afterwards. Where we hang on to the emotion a little bit longer. But again, something I said the other day, and we were talking about in our locker room is, here's the message and not the delivery. Sometimes in the heat of the play, in the heat of the action, there's going to be emotion that comes through, especially as you mentioned, that I want you to do better, or I know that you can do better. And so I'm going to hold you accountable to the standards that you set and that we set as a team. And so this is my way of holding you accountable. And in that moment, there might be a little bit more motion than is surrounding what you might like, but I need you to hear the message of what I'm saying, hear the underlying tone of what I'm saying, and maybe not the delivery. But also, I think, it's really interesting, and we haven't done it here as a team, but some of the teams I've been on have really been into personality tests, like the DISC and the enneagrams and all of that. And as women, when you learn how to communicate with one another, hey, is it someone who likes it straightforward? Is it someone who you can be a little bit more aggressive with? Is it someone who, like, you've got to take off to the side? But if you can learn how to communicate with them and you can learn how to meet them where they are, then a lot of times they will receive that message a lot better. But I don't know that I've figured out the answer. I don't know that any of us have figured out the answer. So if you do, you let us all know.
I think on the female side of things, look, we never talked about that stuff at UCLA. It would go on, and it would maybe get to the point where I remember, and this is kind of a funny story. Reed Sunahara was coaching me. I think most of us know who Reed is. And I was just letting him have it on the ref stand, just relentless. And at some point, Reed kind of snapped and was like, "I'll take you right outside right now." And I was like, "All right, time. Like, I'm good. We're good, man. I'm done." Like, it would get to that point, and then the same thing. Like, I knew I could go hang out with Reed, and we didn't have to sit there and talk our way through it. I feel like we address that stuff head on a lot with the groups I've coached. And there's a lot of discussion about how do we get to this level where we can have some edginess between us and just constantly reinforce and state, like, there's nothing personal here. We're all on the same ship trying to row the same direction. And how do we as a group embrace that, because we know it's going to help us get to where we want to go? And how do we have the hard conversations to work our way through that stuff? I think in there a lot of sports, I see a lot of coaches that struggle, that are just unwilling to have some tough conversations with their players about the reality of things. They're like, "Hey, we've talked about the standard, and you're not holding yourself to it." And those getting through those tougher conversations, I think, are make or break programs. Because if you don't have those, I feel like you cannot have those conversations with some men's teams and be okay. I think if you don't do that on the female side of things, it tends to get worse fast. And John, maybe you can speak to that too, because of your experience coaching the guys at UCLA, at least at the college level, and Karch obviously with the guys now. That's just my feeling is, man, if you've got a great sense of communication and your group can talk to each other, you can be chippy on the court and have a really good conversation about it afterwards. And I think that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can intervene on that stuff and encourage a direct conversation. And I don't know, I was thinking, Todd, when you were talking about accountability, this used to be a topic for me years back, because everybody just says hold one another accountable, but they don't really define what that means. And I think if all of us, what I've observed over the years, I haven't talked about this in a while. What I've observed over the years, if you do just blatant, hey, hold one another accountable, what you do is you typically green light your most dysfunctional person on the team that actually enjoys conflict. And next thing you know, they're screaming at everybody, so what I've done in the past is I've defined where accountability can come. And I've thought that was effective. And that was around the controllables, your attitude and your effort. If somebody's dogging it or doing the wrong thing off the court, or they're not in the right headspace, you've got to be able to say, hey, we have to change this right now. And a lot of times coaches aren't around for that. Those are the things where those accountabilities are really important. if you start to yell at somebody because they hit a ball out of bounds or missed a block, well, so have you. And then you start getting pretty blamey, and then it gets a little bit dysfunctional. So I was always like, hey, I'll talk to the players about those types of things and where the standard is and how they need to hit it and how we need to improve in those areas. But if somebody doesn't go for a ball those are the things where I felt like there was a little bit more room for this interpersonal accountability piece.
Karch, how did you deal with the women when you felt it was getting a little chippy?
We were perfect. We never had that.
There you go. Answer.
Rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah. When you have special people like Ty, you have somebody like Courtney Thompson on the women's side who can be really competitive, and manifest it in a way where it's not, I don't know, it doesn't cross the line and start really tearing other people down, but it can just bring out the best in people. Micah Ma'a on the men's side does the same thing, just a ferocious competitors who afterward you can give a high five, and they have a way about them that I was never as good as somebody like Micah or somebody like Courtney. But the thing I guess I emphasize, would always emphasize, is we have to, we whatever team it is, we don't always just play one group strictly with together all the time. We have to be able to play with and against each other. And so sometimes I'll be playing against my best friend at the net, and I have to try as hard as I can against her or against him to make her or his life miserable across the net, because nobody's feeling sorry for USA when we go put a uniform and we're playing other countries. And sometimes if it gets a little chippy, that's okay too. The men had a great tournament in Paris, only lost one match, and that one match was against Poland. And there was at least one guy on Poland who was really chippy, and I think got us out of our game a little. So we need some practice where things are going to get heated. We need to be able to figure out how are we going to respond to stuff like that. But in general, no, you don't want it to just go so far that feelings, I don't know, that trust is broken over the long term. But we have to be giving great effort to try to challenge each other so much in our own gym that we're prepared for the challenges that other teams are going to relish giving us.
So with that, I'd like to go back to Todd, because I'd like to talk about that first year in the transition with Phil. And then I'd like to ask Phil how he's used that when you've got some of the next players who you played with, getting them to raise their game.
Well, Mark, you mentioned the track workout. I don't know, Phil, you want to talk about your first wonderful track workout?
I still have reoccurring nightmares from those stupid workouts.
Oh, they were so fun. Good old Sandy Combs, our trainer. Yeah, I think you might have visited the trash can at least once that workout, if I recall correctly.
Oh, yeah. But that really got me through the workout. But I went into all right, before playing with Todd, I was just like a knucklehead who was avoiding the real world by playing volleyball instead of getting a real job, and Todd really kind of showed me how to be a professional athlete. And I just went in with the attitude, whatever Todd does, I'm going to do. I don't care how much it hurts. I'm just going to brace the suck. And I think that's really what got me through it. Like, all right, this is going to suck, but it is what it is.
I think one of the stories I do like to tell people when I knew, Phil had finally attained what I had always thought that he could have when we first got together at lunch. I told him I thought he could be, the best player in the world, that it would take him 2 or 3 years or 5 or 6 years, something like that. And I remember and this thought actually occurred to me. We were in Beijing. We just lost to Latvia, who is the worst team in the tournament, basically, in our first round game. And we were about to play our second round opponent, Switzerland. And I don't know if you remember this or not, Phil, but I was just bitter after we lost to Latvia because we had not played great. Phil had walked through. His legs were not as frisky as he normally is. He didn't have his belly button over the net. That kind of. And I was just bitter about it. And I was really struggling, like mentally, personally about it. I don't know if you remember this, Phil, but you turned to me right before, literally, must have been 30 seconds before the first whistle. They're about to serve. And you're like, hey, man, we've gone through too many track workouts, too many plyometrics. We've thrown up too many times, basically to give this up. Let's go take care of our business and be who we know we can be. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment in time, wow, this is a guy that, like he kind of said, didn't know how to be a professional, and now he's teaching me how to be a better professional. And obviously, we did really well after that. Do you remember that, Phil? Do you remember?
I have no recollection of that. I don't believe you, actually. Maybe you made that up.
Yeah. No, it actually happened, Phil, because it's ingrained in my memory. Because I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, like that's someone who went from not a kid by any means, but young in the game to someone who's very mature. And I don't mean physically, I mean mentally. To say that, so I felt that was actually a pivotal moment for me to get me off of my woe is me, poor attitude that I had after our loss, and kicked me in the backside and jettisoned us, I think, to a gold medal, quite frankly. So you should know that, and you should now tell that story as your own.
Okay.
Nice. I always keep that in mind. Every coach who coaches at the Olympics, or every coaching staff, has to think really hard about opening ceremonies, how much you participate, how much you're standing, how much you're walking. Can you get out of there with an early exit? What time are we playing the next day? Because I think the reason, at least I was there working television, but Phil, you did not look like yourself that day, the day after. And so it's just kind of a cautionary tale. Like, how do we enjoy the moment, but also conserve our energy? That's a really important balance to find for any Olympic team, especially if they're going to be competing on the very next day after opening ceremonies.
Yeah. And to add to that point we talked about earlier, like, you're not going to be 100% every single match. Like, I was so consumed with, oh my God, my legs are dead. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, all of a sudden I forgot how to play volleyball. Like, I was just so worried about my stupid legs, instead of like just shooting the ball around a little bit and maybe running a little lower set and, just dealing with what I had to work with. Like, I was just like panicked, basically. And it was a lesson that I learned the hard way. But it actually was a blessing in disguise, because we had a much nicer bracket for losing that that match. So
all part of your master plan.
Yeah.
But the big lesson is failure recovery, because it is so often that like Ty, when we were competing in London, Brazil barely made it out of the pool. Like, it is incredibly often that the team that goes on to win the Olympics has a massive failure somewhere along the way, gets their butts kicked once, twice, maybe barely advances from the group. Not saying that you guys barely advanced, Todd and Phil, but it is very often that you're going to lose to somebody and still figure out a way to win the Olympics, lose in the preliminaries and go on. And so, but how you respond, how you recover from that is really important. The USA women in 2021 in Tokyo against Russia just killed us. And the women responded, the team responded really well, and went on to win its first gold medal, understanding that happens all the time there, that we can stub our toe in a big way and still go on and compete for a gold medal.
As we start to wrap this up because we're going to run out of time. Eric?
Yeah, I got to get off. Sorry. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks,
Be
Eric.
well.
Take
Good luck.
care.
Yep.
So with that, I'm going to ask Tayyiba first. You've got somebody who's got a lot of ability, but they're stuck. What would you say to the coach, and what would you say to the player?
That's a good question. Biggest lesson itself is don't put a period where you should put a comma, right? We've heard that in so many different ways, especially when it goes to mental health. This is not the end of a story. This is a comma. But learning to pivot. There is power in learning how to pivot, right? That comma, that the sentence goes on, the play goes on, the action goes on. And so and maybe it's reaching outside your toolbox. What is it about this athlete? Why are they struggling? Where is it that they're struggling? But here, can we pivot for this one athlete? Do I need to take them and watch more video? Do I need to, maybe set them up with a mental coach, a sports psychologist? Do I need to maybe try some unorthodox techniques? Maybe what I've been teaching is not working for them. Am I setting film as a coach? Am I looking at what's developing in the world of volleyball? A lot of, you see the game is evolving. You see a lot of more pushing and tooling, and there's different things that are happening, evolving at the game. And so, am I keeping in line with just what international volleyball is doing, or college volleyball, or whatever level you're at, just to see if any of those tips and tricks might help my athlete? And same thing as an athlete, can I reach outside my toolbox? Am I talking with my whole network, my family, my friends, my, mentors, sports psychologists, who else can I pull into my board of directors of, my performance success, and lean into them to see, what avenues have I not touched that I can still learn how to perform? It's not just stuff on the court. How can I be just a better student of the game? And so can you, again, learn some of those context cues that slow the game down for you? Can you evolve your mental performance? And can you still grow? And again, I think part of it is taking a look in the mirror, as we talked about before, and kind of, it's okay to be where you are. It's okay for you to be. Sometimes we try to get to step 5 and we haven't gone through steps 2, 3, and 4. And by the time we get to 5, we're not as complete as we should have been because we missed some steps along the way. So I've got to sit in the funk, be okay sitting in that funk for a little bit, knowing that I've got to get through this. And when I learn the lessons that are being taught to me at this stage, then I can move to the next one. And then I can conquer that stage and I will continue to progress. But hey, be comfortable with where you are, knowing that you're putting in the effort and the steps to get to the next phase.
John, what about you?
I'll start with a coach because I think sometimes I need to remind coaches to take the same advice and act on it that they teach their players. You ask your players to be present or to have good self-talk, and then you could go home and be consumed with what might happen at the end of the season and be beating yourself up. So sometimes you just need to make sure you're taking your own advice. But I don't know. I was also thinking it again in terms of context of where I'm at too. Fish. It's been a different process for me, and I would say the principles of success in this process is the same, and that is do the right thing over and over and over again. Do it over and over and over again, and just win today. You just got to figure out how to win today. That's what you can control. And I think if you do those things, you're going to maximize your potential. I mean, you had a bunch of Bruins on here on this call, which good choice by you. But
you hired them all.
Yeah, I can say the same thing. But I think what Wooden permeates all things at UCLA, and I think we've all read his books for good reason. And what he talks about above all is maximization of potential. The truth is some of the athletes we're coaching are not going to be Olympians. But where's that peace of mind? And that is making sure that they maximize every opportunity they have to become the best player that they are. And that's the same thing if we're becoming a coach or we're becoming an administrator.
Philip?
I think in the past, I don't know, I'd say 6, 7 years, I've really kind of worked on my mental game. And it's really helped me out in my 40s now playing. Um, and, you know, I mean, Karch was kind of like the 4 minute mile, like, you can't play past you. You should be getting worse in your 40s, not at least maintain, what you could do on the court. So my advice would be like, okay, you guys got to start working on what's in between your two ears. Start meditating, start reading books, positive, uplifting books, and just have a belief in yourself. Because there's a team that was one of the best in the world a couple years ago, and now they're like not even in top 25 probably. Like what happened? They didn't become worse players. It's just what's going on in between their ears, and really it's just mental.
You talk about embracing the suck. I think there's something about being able to look at yourself through film, through analysis, through coaches.
Yeah, but like for me, once I got to, all right, the top, I kind of took the foot off the gas a little bit. Like I'd, maybe skip. Usually I would like work out and stretch and roll. I'd skip the stretch and roll session. You know what I'm saying? And be like, I'm fine. You're smart enough to convince yourself to get out of something. So I think having a coach there, be like, no, you're not skipping that, and to hold you accountable, going back full circle.
Karch, you've had a lot of great players in the gym, and some of them have absolutely broken out. How did you help them break out? How did you tell the other coaches to work with those players to get them to that next level?
A couple of things have been touched on. One is just ownership. If something goes wrong, I think it's powerful when each person is looking for what he could have done better. Like maybe the play went poorly for a variety of reasons, but if I can take ownership over the part that I played, I'm going to then think about what I could do better. And just that ownership immediately leads me to better solutions instead of thinking it was somebody else's fault or kind of passing the blame or responsibility for what went wrong. So I've found that ownership is a really powerful, almost like a North Star or a compass to guide us and to look within and think, okay, what is it that I can do different or better? And then another one that I think is helpful as a coach is to try to help people that I coach look back and think, okay, when things have gone wrong before, or when you've been in a slump before, or struggled or been stuck on a plateau before, what's worked and what hasn't? What was most successful? What haven't you tried yet? To really try to tap into their whole career, which each of us has a whole string of successes and failures and times when we went through struggle, went through slumps, and figured out ways to get out of it. And so often the answer is within that person. And just I think it helps to ask questions and remind them of some of their successes. We forget. We've done so much when you get to the level beyond college and at the elite level that sometimes people just don't, they're thinking forward so much, they forget, oh yeah, I had an injury and I was really struggling for those 4 months trying to come back and working through rehab. But then I decided to do X or Y. And so kind of being a reminder or like a way to point out to people their own successes, past successes, especially, and past solving of big problems is, I think, helpful.
You're in the middle of it right now. You're competing for a national championship at Cal Poly. You've built a great program from an unassuming school, and you've been able to recruit some wonderful athletes. How do you do it?
I mean, if I have a player who's struggling, and we have a great sports psychologist, his name is Jeff Troche. He's worked a lot with a lot of golfers and tennis players as well as other teams. And he always talks about, and actually wrote a book on getting one day better. And so focusing more on the micro instead of the macro. And this would be the same to a coach or a player. And John, you mentioned it, you know, we get caught up sometimes in thinking what's going to happen at the end of the season or at the end of the quad instead of just literally getting one day better. And if you get one day better, that means by the time you get to the end of the season, you know, for us, that would be I'm 120 days better, or for our team or for the players. Karch and Phil kind of mentioned this, and I wrote this down actually as well, is trying to find in that player what got you here. What built you to become the player you are. Look back at that when you're struggling and go, wow, you know what? I'm a really good passer. I can lean into that and lean into whatever your strengths are in those areas. And then lastly, particularly I guess this could go coach to coach, but for sure, coach to player, is just sometimes people just need someone to believe in them. And I've seen this particularly in college, where gals are struggling, and it's just literally simply having a meeting and just saying, look, I personally think you're a great player. I think you have all the tools to be in our lineup, and maybe not putting it in all-American terms, but to attain the goals that I know you want to attain. I have the belief in you. And just letting them know that, because a lot of times they don't have that belief in themselves. So I think giving them that last little shot of belief. I've watched multiple gals just kind of get over the hump on that, and then inevitably they come back to it. I think we all do as athletes, and that's okay. That's actually good. That's how we talked about failing and learning and whatnot. But sometimes it just takes that little extra belief in them to get them over the hump.
So with that, I'd like to say a couple of things. One, as a volleyball fan, you create the next generation for us to cheer for. There's been some point in time where you were the players that we all cheered for. John, you have taken this opportunity to reinvigorate USA Volleyball as an entity and give it the direction and the leadership that I feel it needs going into LA 2028. For the people watching this, I hope you'll learn about the USA Foundation and Wade Gerard, because for the first time, USA Volleyball through the foundation is opening up. So they have the resources, they want the input, they have the leadership to take this and use this for the development of USA Volleyball from grassroots to the Olympic level. So if you're involved in volleyball, you should be involved with the USA Foundation as well. The last thing I'd like to say, and many of the people here, as well as April Ross and several other players that we'll all know, are on the board of Building Brilliant Futures. Building Brilliant Futures takes 5th to 8th grade kids that are within the inner city underserved population. We bring them to Division I universities that are in their neighborhood. So instead of getting pushed away, we're bringing them to the court. An hour and a half on the court, an hour and a half in the classroom. We talk about growth mindset. We have Trevor Reagan with Growth Mindset that's created videos and an opportunity for these kids to learn. We take the student athletes, we teach them to be mentors so their voices are heard and they're able to help change these kids' lives. We feed everybody and we tie them into the outreach program from the university. We are changing kids' lives using education and volleyball we're empowering the voice of the student athletes, and we're using the resources of the university. So if you're interested, please take a look at buildingbrilliantfutures.org, see what we're doing. And for all of us at Building Brilliant Futures and USA Volleyball, I just want to thank everybody for being part of our 6th annual roundtable. And I can't say thank you guys enough.